Hey, everybody. Welcome again to Lead Wisco. My name is Troy Murphy. I'm with Ryan Kibbe. Ryan?
Summer is here, Troy.
Summer's here. You're wearing your Packer shirt.
Got my Packer shirt. I've got my tan going here. I'm feeling good. I'm ready for this.
We have a special guest today, and we both know her. You probably have known her much longer than I have. But I'm excited just because of what she does, not just in our state, but I want to say Midwest and East Coast.
Yeah.
For the Global Leadership Network.
Yeah. Ellen Schwandt. Yeah.
Ellen.
She's awesome.
Hey.
Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me here today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's exciting. I love my state. I love Wisconsin. I love Green Bay. I love the Fox Valley. I love what God's doing.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, because I did a really poor job of that, and I'm going to say Ryan did too, because you know a lot more about her. But
yeah, and we met 4 or 5 years, 6 years ago, was it something like that? And I had reached out to her at the church that she was at and just said, hey, we want to go after certain things in humanities and how to outreach to serve our community better. And I was referred by a mutual colleague to her. And so we wound up in her office, and the rest, as they say, is history.
So tell us about yourself, Ellen. Who are you? Married, kids, grandkids, with a mystery of Ellen. So tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I have been married to my husband, Dave, for 40 years, actually. That's hard to believe. I'm not old enough to be married for 40 years.
I want you to be careful now, because when Ryan hears that, then he starts asking for advice, whether it's parenting, marriage.
Yeah.
He tries to
this is true.
like fill his learning book every time we do an interview.
You see how they pigeonhole me this way? They like put me in a box like that, paint me in a corner. But.
Yeah, no, 40 years to the same man. I'll tell you, he has been my inspiration. He has really pushed me in places that I don't feel comfortable in, where he's the evangelist. So he gets out there and talks to people, and then he's like, includes me into it. So there was just no way for me to escape, getting to know people. So I have 2 wonderful daughters who have given me 6 amazing grandchildren.
6 grandkids.
6,
wow.
3 and 3. So 3 boys, 3 girls.
Wow.
And this last Sunday got to experience my very first lacrosse tournament, which as a grandma, I'm watching them beat my grandson with a stick, and I want to just take that stick and beat him back, But, great team in Neenah, and it was just really an awesome time to support, my grandkids. The other one's a hockey player. And then I've got some soccer players that are girls.
So you're busy.
Oh, I'm very busy. Yeah.
So tell us, born and raised Wisconsin?
Born and raised Wisconsin. So born in Appleton, Wisconsin, and pretty much lived here my whole entire life. Did spend 4 years out in California in the U.S. Air Force with my husband, and just came back to Wisconsin and got re-engaged in what I started out. Actually finished high school out in California, and actually did some schooling in the arts and stuff with set designs and different things like that. Also took some psychology courses and different things. So I was just like, what am I supposed to be doing with this? And so I went back to work for a local floral shop in town, and discovered that I really enjoyed people and making them happy in events. And so I opened my own event planning and wedding floral shop called the Master's Touch Flower Studio, and did that for 23 years in the Fox River Valley.
Yeah.
So, and just served people the way that I would want to be served if it was my daughter's wedding. And I actually got to do both of my daughter's weddings.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So Appleton, if for people don't know, in the Green Bay world, that's the big city. Like that's the big city south of Green Bay.
Yeah. Well, and I remember Ellen too. I remember hearing that part of your story and how you transitioned into ministry, and then you were on teams, pastoral teams, and then now you find yourself connected to all of these different pastors and leaders all throughout the Midwest. And you've had it every conversation I have with you. It's about the greater we, what's happening in our faith context, throughout the Midwest. And I see that about you. You're a connector, and you enjoy bringing people together in unity. Like that's a lot of what you do, as far as also going after, leadership. Can you kind of enhance us a little
Yeah,
bit?
and give us kind of the path of
Yeah.
these church kind of, because you have worked in churches. It wasn't just flowers.
Right, right. So, being a business leader in the community and doing that for 23 years, and then also growing up in the church, I think there was this idea that, to be called into ministry meant that you had to go serve in a church. And so I stepped into being a business leader and really felt fulfilled in doing that. And also felt the call of God on my life. So I thought I need to go back and get my education with that too. So while I'm working my job, I'm also going to Bible school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I went back to Bible school.
Where'd you go?
I went to Global University, which was an Assembly of God correspondence type of Bible school, and got my degree in Bible and biblical studies and biblical counseling.
So funny to say you got a degree in Bible.
Degree in Bible.
The degree in the Bible, yeah.
And I know, because I got out of biblical studies. It was way too deep.
Yeah.
It was too much.
Oh, I loved
Like,
it.
I didn't know how I agree, but in 4 years, it's like, I know less than I started. I don't know if you felt that, but the depth of Scripture, especially now at our age, it's like you keep reading.
Yeah.
And you're like, I think I know less.
You unlearn.
Yeah, because you go to college and you think honestly, college, I think, sets you up with good disciplines and habits, but wouldn't you agree? You walk away more mystified, I think, by Scripture. I do. I did at least.
I do.
Yeah.
I do too, but I also challenged too.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to put it in a box. I
Yeah.
don't. It's meant to be used in the day and age in which we're reading it. And
Yeah.
so as I'm going to Bible school, I'm realizing that both ministry and business can mix together. And how does that look? And
Yeah.
I tried to put it in the box of the church. And I would go in and start working admin jobs for a church, and all of a sudden found myself hearing the voice outside the walls calling me,
Yeah.
going, okay, well, I need to go back to doing my business.
Yeah.
And I did that for a couple years back and forth and did that. And then all of a sudden just really felt like, okay, I need to make a decision and figure out what I'm going to do. And I always loved people. That's why I did the business the way I did it. I loved people. I loved hearing their stories and stuff. And so as I got into ministry, I realized that I wanted to help people there too. I got called in, really, my beginning of real in-depth church ministry was really being a business administrator because of my background in business. And so I was the one setting a church up for budgets that didn't have budgets before, that were getting them aligned so that they could be successful in the building that they were in.
Wow.
And so I had history in the building that the church came in and took over, so I knew the operations of it. I knew
Yeah.
the background behind it. I knew exactly what it was going to take to keep the motors going and to keep the lights on in the place. And so I started out as the business administrator, and as different pastors would come in, they'd see my gifts in people, and they were like, well, you're a people person. You should be out in the community doing stuff in the community. And I'm like, yes, I need people. Putting me in an office and calling me an admin killed me. It was just
I was going to say,
yeah.
That's not
because you
thing.
said about people and you have creative gifts, it just seems like putting someone in jail.
But she had I love the way you say this, Troy, where faith and business intersect.
Yeah.
She has been a pastor and she has been a business owner where
Yeah.
they both have intersected. She has a wealth of experience there.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
So tell us how that's gotten to, you do something really unique and special today that maybe many of our watchers or listeners don't know about the Global Leadership Network. So I guess give us a real big picture on what is that and what are you doing?
Yeah, so I would say probably about 13 years ago when I took on a position at a church, I was given the responsibility to host the Global Leadership Summit at a church in Appleton, and I had never experienced it before. I thought, well, what is this thing? And so I decided to go in, and I was kind of the event manager over it, along with another couple people that were help hosting it to the Appleton region. And I'm looking in the room, and there's 100 people in a 1,000-seat auditorium. And I'm going, why is there not more people here? This is amazing stuff. I'm listening to this, and I'm like, why didn't I not know about this before? And so I'm like, I'm watching this, and I'm like catching vision of what this really could look like in Appleton, Wisconsin. And I, as a business leader and then also in ministry, I'm like, how can we intersect the two? And so I began to talk with the girl that was leading it. And she's like, well, by the way, I'm going to school to be a teacher. I'm going to actually step away from this. I'm actually priming you to take it over. And I'm like, okay. So as I'm beginning to envision what this is going to look like, I'm like, I want this place full.
Yeah.
I want this place full, not with just church people. I want it filled with business leaders, with community leaders, with moms and dads, with people that are called to lead in our community. And so I began to just really canvass my community and invite people. And word got out, and people were coming from Green Bay. They were coming from Fond du Lac, Madison, La Crosse, all over the state, coming to our site. And eventually filled the place.
Yeah.
And I said, we can't do this anymore. You guys need to start your own sites. And I think you were just coming into the region, and I was like, Troy, you need to take some of these sites from Green Bay because I need more room here. So, and so it filled my tank. It just brought me to a place where this is ministry crossing the sectors where every person serves. You may be called to government. You may be called to be a healthcare worker. You may be called to be a school teacher. You may be called to be a mom, but what is it that you can be doing and leading well?
Right.
And it's so inspiring that as I began to transition out of the church, my U.S. field team rep calls me and says, no, you need to come work for us because of what you were doing in Wisconsin and just your passion behind this.
That's good.
And I'm like, yes, I want to do this. And so I really began just learning the kind of the administrative parts. I don't know why God puts me there first, but it's always like admin first, and then we'll launch you, And so within a year and a half, I got the phone call from Steve Bell asking if I would like to be the first U.S. field team director. And I am like, yes, and so he's like,
so great.
We're going to give you Wisconsin, we're going to give you Michigan, and we're going to give you the Northeast. And I'll tell you, I am having the best fun of my life.
Wow.
It's amazing. Doing what I did in Appleton, but also helping other sites step up and being what they're doing too.
So you're sharing the vision, and then you're helping them host some of the offerings that the GLN does, which is GLS Next, and what's the other one, the super one?
Oh, the special edition.
Special edition, yeah. So that's amazing.
Yeah, and you've expanded your sphere of influence, which, that's what you spoke to, all of these different spheres of influence, from family to church to media to arts, sciences, all of it. Any leader in any one of these places, government, wherever, your goal in your role is to help them catch the larger vision of how we can literally transform the world by letting ourselves be transformed, as Troy says, by faith and business intersecting, or faith and government, or whatever your sphere of influence is.
Exactly.
That is brilliant.
Yeah.
So why do we need to watch the Global Leadership Sermon? I know why. You tell me why. Tell our listeners.
You said Global Leadership Sermon.
Did I say sermon? Summit. Troy, it's the tan. It caused me to
I was going to say, man, you're still in. Are you preaching this weekend?
No, I'm going on vacation. Sorry.
You're probably just like detoxing
I'm
from
detoxing.
teaching so much.
It is. Global Leadership Summit, sorry.
So why should the people
Correct.
attend the Global Leadership Summit? I'll tell you, if you want to grow in your knowledge of wisdom of what it means to be a leader, if you want to be inspired, if you want to, it really, the Global Leadership Summit just isn't about one speaker after another speaker after another speaker on their particular topic. It really is well crafted to that it actually talks to the whole part of the leader. Mm-hmm. And so when you go, you're not going to be, you will feel like you're fire hosed because it's such good stuff.
It is.
But you're going to get something out of it. You're going to grab some things that you can then take into wherever it is that you serve in your workplace, or wherever you feel inspired to start something new. It does that, where it actually helps people to see something that they're gifted in, take it to another level. Mm. And so really, to me, and it also brings community together. Mm. It brings collaboration. I like, Troy said this in one of our meetings that we had with our field directors and with all of our host sites and stuff. And he said that the Global Leadership Summit is a place where leadership is fostered to where it brings collaboration to a community.
Yeah.
And so that just stuck with me when you said that at one of our meetings. And it's just like, I keep saying that it's a place of fostering this collaboration, this energy that is happening in a community and is looking for a place to land. And I think as people are in the Global Leadership Summit, and I have experienced this, is that leaders are together and they're being inspired together and they're learning together, and now they want to know where to serve together.
Yeah.
In their communities. And so
let me we've never done this, but I want to play devil's advocate, and I want to have a kind of a role play. So I want you to try to convince me. I'm a new pastor, or I'm a pastor that has a church, and you're trying to get me to host the Global Leadership Summit. Because I talk to a lot of pastors that could probably give you 100 reasons why they shouldn't do it. I'd love just to hear some of your responses.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to role play. So you've just met me. I don't know what denomination I am. I'm kind of a mixed blend, but anyway. Everybody's laughing at this.
I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to be real general here, so I don't stereotype it.
I know.
No, so here's my problem, Joel, and I have so much to do at our church. I don't really have time to try to host a conference. I just don't have the time.
You're not the only pastor that doesn't have time on their schedule, but you do have somebody in your church that you could call upon to help you lead this. So this doesn't have to be you. And really, to be honest with you, we don't want you doing this alone. We want you to create a team around you that would do it.
And that's going to take more work. So I'm going to have to drop something because we're not that big. And I feel like, gosh, who do I want to burden with another project? Gosh, because we've got some projects we got to do here. Again, it feels a little bit secular. Where's the gospel being preached? I mean, I have a lot of souls we're trying to reach. I don't know if it's worth it.
So who are the people that are sitting in your pews is what I would ask you. Because they don't represent the church itself. They represent the community that's around them. And so as a church and as a pastor, we want to ignite our people to be passionate where they are serving for Christ. And the Global Leadership Summit is a Christian organization, and we do have Christian speakers, and a lot of our content is Christ-centered. And we believe that all leaders can learn from each other. But what I want to say is that if you would have the Global Leadership Summit in your church and you engage your leaders in the summit, they're going to see a broader perspective of Christianity than just within the four walls of a church. They're going to see it to the world. They're going to see it to their community and where it is that they fit in their community. They fit in their church, and that's great, and that they need to be a part. We as the Global Leadership Summit do believe that the church is the hope of the world. But we also believe that there are individuals that are called to serve in other areas in the community. And so as you as a pastor are feeding into your flock, how are you going to release them into the community? The Global Leadership Summit is a tool to help you do that. And so it's an investment that you make. It's a time investment that you make that I will guarantee you will come back to you 100 times more when it comes to the engagement of your people.
Do you think, I'm struggling because I can't quite even get people to tithe. I can't hardly get people to sign up for different events we have at the church. It just feels expensive. And who's going to give a day and a half? I mean, who else is doing this?
We have over 500 sites across the United States that do it. And then we also add that after the summit, we have host sites, thousands across the world that will host the Global Leadership Summit. They see the value in it because they know that it's going to help build them as leaders, individuals as leaders in their communities and in their churches. The one thing that I would say is that, with the Global Leadership Summit, if you can't make it for both days, what we have done over the years and through some of our learning that we've learned is that we've created a package called the 7-day video on demand. So you purchase your ticket and then you get the 7 days after to watch it. This gives you the opportunity that if you have to step out for an appointment or you can only make it for one day, that you can go back and you can watch any of the content that you wish to watch. We also have an available package that you can buy. If you purchase your ticket for the next year, we also have the GLS On Demand that you are able to get, and you can watch all the content of the summit after the summit as well. So it really is a time. We also have our website, the globalleadershipsummit.org. I should say globalleadershipsummit.org has thousands and thousands of articles and videos, all really based on the 33 competencies of leadership. And so you can go in and you can actually look up productivity. You can look up, EQ. You can look up agility. You can look up these categories, and you will get content that you can actually look at and you can watch through our past speakers and stuff. So it's a tool and it's a learning experience that you can have all in one.
I'm a little nervous by bringing another voice, especially with all the voices during COVID, all the stuff that we just experienced. I feel like, do I want to risk the political mess of someone speaking something in my church? I mean, it's already we walk on eggshells anyway. So I feel like, am I putting something in our church that's going to divide us even more?
I'm good. After everything we walked through last year with COVID, but also with the racial tensions that we had in our country, the one thing that the global leadership wanted to do is help bring direction to our country that was going to be a wholeness, of fulfillment, that we weren't going to separate, but we were going to unite. And we had some speakers that came and they spoke in a way that gave some understanding to some of the cultural things that were happening, but then also truth. Everything landed on truth of who God is and God's word, and us as believers outside of our race, but us as believers and what we all believe in to be true. And so seeing that happening on the stage last year was really healing, and it brought healing to the people that watched it. And, if I could get it into every hands of every leader, every person, I would, because from T.D. Jakes to Albert Tate to Nora Smith or Nora Jones and stuff, it was just amazing. Some of the things that were said that brought healing to a culture that was really crying out for some help.
Well, I think I'm going to sign up. Put me down, Joellen. My name's Ryan Kibbe.
Nice.
My name's Ryan Kibbe. I'm a stubborn pastor that,
Yeah, I have a few others. As you guys were doing a great role play, I was like, oh my gosh, and there's other ones too that I could hear objections in my head too.
Are there?
Oh yeah, like one. Well, one of them would be, and again, this isn't. First of all, I love the GLS, and I watched it all.
You don't have to be defensive right now.
I'm feeling a little bit. but one of them was like, well, I don't know if I like that speaker because of their life experience or their life issues or they were divorced or whatever. Like, and my response to that is, listen, if God can speak through a donkey, not that any of those people were donkeys.
The Balaam out,
I'm not calling them donkeys. Let me be clear. I'm just saying I can hear truth and wisdom through any voice out there.
And we're proof of that, right? Two donkeys trying to do
I think we are. Here, a little
podcast.
fist pound right here, post-COVID.
There you go.
But I'm just saying,
I
I hear that all the time. And I'm going, I'm telling you, there are people, I won't name names, I've listened to those in the past. Some of them I didn't particularly, they're not my cup of tea, they're not my flavor. But I had some life-changing revelations leadership-wise through the very people that, I mean, can we be real? Sometimes they're just people who talk or whatever that you struggle to hear. But I heard some of the people that most offended me, I got some of the most life-changing truth. Yeah. I think there's value in that, Troy.
I do. I think we make the mistake as people today, and especially if you're kind of sitting in that vein of what you said. The irony is you're this religious cancel culture. The problem is we attach that we think listening and learning from somebody means we fully agree with everything.
Exactly.
And it doesn't mean full agreement.
That's right.
I mean, so can we learn to love people, listen to people, learn from people?
Yeah.
And we don't have to agree with them. And there's freedom in that.
And
so
pastors will cancel the event before they start. And then they complain about cancel culture. And my response, what Bill Vanderbush told me one time, my friend, he says, where do you think the world learned cancel culture from? Who do you think they learned it from? They learned it from the church.
Yeah, that's so true.
No, I really think that right where we're at as a nation is key as we step into what we call normal. I really feel our normal has been shifted.
Yeah.
I think through COVID, we've actually learned the importance of family and slowing things down. If this hasn't done that, if we can't change, shame on us, because we need to change to be able to bring wholeness and happiness to our families. And I think culture got too fast for us all.
Yeah.
And so now it's been slowed down, and the important things in life are elevated, which is family and faith, or faith and family, and so as you put those in priority, we start to look at, as providers and as leaders for our families and stuff, what are we putting as a priority, and any kind of input that you can get, whether I have daughters that, they're trying to be the best parent they can. And I tried to model being a good parent. Of course, back in my day, Dr. Spock was the only book that they had out there. And nowadays you don't want to read that, So they've got a plethora of parenting books that they're reading to help parent their children. And, I had Focus on the Family, which I really enjoyed that too. But I think, as we look at leading our families, how do we lead well? How do we lead in our area of responsibilities and stuff? And the Global Leadership Summit is a tool that just helps with that. But I think personally, even in my own life, I have seen where community is something that needs to be elevated. The idea of community being within a building is wrong. Community outside of a building, within our neighborhoods, within those that are within our own communities that we live in. We think of people that are coming to our churches, and where are they coming from? Some of them come from miles away, but what's happening in their own local community? Who are their neighbors, and how are they reaching out to them? And we're starting to see a culture of that starting to rise up too. That's important to the younger generation. The idea of who are your neighbors and knowing who they are. Back to when I was growing up, and there's 20 kids in the backyard playing kickball, and we all know each other and stuff. Nowadays, as we grew up with our kids, that kind of separated itself, and you barely knew each other anymore. Now that's coming back again. Families are wanting to know who live around them. So, yes.
So if I'm a pastor or a leader and I'm leading a congregation, I'll just speak to that one mountain, because I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, Troy, I think the business community, by and large, really appreciates the value of the GLS and the Global Leadership Network. I've found over the years, though, there's such a bias amongst certain pastoral groups against this. And what I typically hear in my head, Troy, is I hear from them, it's almost like God won't use that because it's secular. But I'm trying to eliminate the thought process that this is secular, this is sacred. How about we're just all sacred in every secular space we go, because in our faith, we are who we are everywhere we go. Let's get rid of secular versus sacred. But there's a bias towards this, and I don't know if you've experienced that from other pastors, where it's like they just write the whole thing off because it's secular. But it's not secular. We're
not secular, and we're a faith-based organization, and really our mission is to bring transformation and God's transformation, first of all, to the local church, to be able to actually bring transformation to a community through Christ and through God. And so if you look at our mission statement, who we're about serving God and serving communities so that they can transform the church and transform a community,
I think our experience has been we've had less traction with churches. In fact, very limited.
Wow.
And here in Green Bay, we are, I think, of the last time we had a big gathering was the largest in the state. But it was more business in the secular sector that was more embracing that. So I do think you're right. The hurdle for the business culture is really, is this going to be a church conference? Once they get past that to say, gosh, there's value in this, that's really good. And it's just this idea of, can we learn? How do we learn? The church for
how
too
do we
long.
Learn? That's the key right there.
Because,
how do we learn?
Yeah. And we've we put up castle walls and we put up kind of a moat, and let's keep the bad people out and let the good people in. And the problem with that theology is everybody's bad.
So it's us and
Like
them.
we're all yeah, and so then it becomes very inclusive, or that's like the right word. It's saying we only learn from people that are just like us, or we only will accept words from these people. Otherwise, it's worldly wisdom. And what I kind of chuckle about that, whether it's philosophy, whether it's science, isn't that, if it's true, isn't it all from God anyway? Mm-hmm. And so to learn that, and I do think there's wisdom in, I would say, cultural strategies that are deceptive and
Right.
distortions of truth. That's
Right.
probably the best way to say
Right.
it. But I don't think it's for us to freak out and to fear that. I mean, obviously the Apostle Paul gives us probably the best picture of his efforts into the world.
Yeah.
His Areopagus.
No question.
Mars Hill, his experience there, and even his passion. He'd get angry, but he would rent a room, he'd make tents, he'd meet with people. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, it goes back to, I don't know if Jesus would go to church on Sunday if he showed up today. I mean, I don't know if he wouldn't be here at Community Church. I will guarantee that. And not because we're a bad place. I just don't think he's looking for the lost and those who are hungry. Mm-hmm. So I think he would go, honestly, in Green Bay, we're the drunkest city in America. I think we got that 2 years in a row. We're looking for a third, I think. I think he'd be at a bar.
Yeah.
And not necessarily, drinking with them, but I think he would be trying to bring hope to people that are broken. I think he'd be in a hospital. I think he'd be in a prison. I think he'd be on the streets finding people that are looking for something that he was offering. So, hey, talk to us a little bit about leadership, if you could. And obviously, you have been a woman business leader, which I want to say you're a business leader, but being a woman in our culture probably had its struggles. What was the hardest thing for you being, I think, a leader both in the church and outside of the church, and just being a leader? And was gender ever an issue for you in what you were trying to do? And maybe still is today.
Yeah, I mean, I find it more freeing right now in where I'm at right now and where I'm serving. But there has been challenges. I have found that the business community receives women a lot easier than the church, and so being a business leader in my community and the kind of services that I offered, I didn't have any really pushback when it came to being a woman in leadership out in my community. I was a type of business that what I promised, I delivered. And that was, I wasn't going to make promises I couldn't fulfill, where I heard of other competitors that were doing that and then would show up with something totally different. And I was like, nope, that's not who I am. So built my reputation on that. But then when I got into church leadership, the pastor who had mentored me for most of my life, I really look at him as a true apostle of the city. Pastor Dan Spina was really a pastor of the word and really imparting the word into us to know who we are in Christ. And so as I developed in my Christianity, I knew God had called me to ministry. That didn't really bode well with some men. It was like I kind of felt like I was being pushed into, you can be a secretary, and I'm like, well, that's not where God's calling me. He's not calling me a secretary, He's not calling me to be an administrative assistant or anything like that. He's calling me to do a work. And, I shared I got hired as the business administrator because I had known the church. I knew the building and stuff like that. But I was never feeling fulfilled in that. And so as I started to step into leadership, where a pastor recognized that I had the people skills, and they're like, we want you to actually be the pastor over people skills. I never was given the title of pastor. Well, I got to a place in my leadership in the church that I was not looking for title. I knew who I was. And so I was just going to be Joellen, be who God has called me to be, and I don't need a title behind my name. And so when the title finally came, it was very uncomfortable because it was like I don't identify with that title, you know. I identify in who I am in Christ, and so that is to be who God's called me to be as a believer. And so, I got some pushback. I feel like there has been some times where I was overlooked, or I actually worked harder than the men and didn't get the accolades or the pay for it, and stuff like that. So it was just, but that's not how I based my faith. I always based it off of, or I should say my position, I always based it off of what God was telling me to do and whether I was being obedient and doing it. And so as I was given a challenge, my scripture and, everybody's scripture is, greater is he that's in me, that's he that's in the world, or I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That became my mantra all the time, every time I was given something hard. But then I'd actually close the door of my office and say, okay, God, if this is you, and if you have given me this project to do, or you're setting me on this assignment, then I know you're going to provide for me. And then I would just surrender it to him. And I would just, make the asks that I need to make, and if the doors would close, the doors would close. If the doors would open, they would open. So.
Give us a leadership fail moment that you can remember that really grew, like you learned a ton. I mean, obviously we all have leadership fails, but give us one. We've been asking some of our guests that, a leadership fail, a big one that you still remember and reflect on, but it grew you up.
Wow.
And besides coming on this podcast, that doesn't count.
Well, there's several, but the one that I can remember just recent, is just in the last several years, is that boundaries. The idea of how leaders do need boundaries and how I didn't have them. And I would just let anything and everything come at me to where it just destroyed me physically. And
so can you give us texture to that? Because what do you mean by that? You were saying yes to everything? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I was saying yes to everything. I was a people pleaser. And of course, being a woman in the position that I was in, if I said no, it was like, wasn't going to be received well.
Yeah.
And so I would just take it on. And in the meantime, my physical body is starting to break down. On top of it, my relationship with my family is breaking down because I'm putting everything else priority over them. And so, it got to a place where it was just really, physically, I ended up in the hospital. It was to that place where I had, I just wasn't sure what was going on. I felt like my heart was racing so hard that I felt like I was having a heart attack. And with history in my family, I said to my husband, you need to take me to the hospital. And so he rushed me to the hospital, and they're like, your heart is going like crazy. What do they call that? AFib or whatever,
right.
And stuff like that, where it's a regular heartbeat and stuff like that. And they gave me the nitrogen. They said, we're going to put you under observation for 24 hours here in the hospital. We're going to watch you. And was there, and I was on monitors, and I'd be walking up and down the hall, and all of a sudden the nurses would come running, and they're like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And they're like, there's something not right with your heart. And so I went through some tests with that. I went through some other things. It ended up clearing itself up. But what God showed me was that I was killing myself over something that was just a thing. It wasn't a value. It wasn't a person. It wasn't my family. My family, my relationship with God is different than what I do. And that God made it very clear in that moment. What you do is not what I'm asking. It's who you are. And I would say another that ties in with this is about a couple of years ago, I was sitting in a woman's Bible study, and it was about finding purpose. And women feel like their purpose is in doing. And as the people are going around and they're actually talking about, trying to find their purpose, I can hear the Holy Spirit screaming in my heart saying, stop this. It's not about doing. It's about being. It's about just be who you are, and I will use you as my vessel. And it was like that lesson that I learned with my heart in ministry, what I was doing landed itself that day, saying, you just be, and I'll do the rest. And I did that. This was in a transition time for me as I'm working on staff at the Global Leadership Summit. And I'm so used to productivity, improving myself. Yeah. And I'm on a staff that's like, we see you and we value you. You don't have to do anything more than what you're doing. You're doing great. And I'm like, but I don't feel like, and they're like, no, it's not about that. It just be who you are, Joellen. We value that.
That's good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Can I also, because I do know you and I know your life story, I'm gonna take you a place here. Feel free to not share or share, whatever you feel led to do. And I've heard Troy's story too a little bit in terms of church culture and what you have endured and faced. Knowing your narrative of your life, you've had some really rough encounters in church culture. And I feel like there will be people watching or listening on this podcast that they're what some would call de-churched. They love Jesus. They like Jesus. They cannot stand churches, and they cannot stand church pastors. They cannot stand church people. I know they're out there. Somebody's listening to this. You, knowing your life narrative, you would have had 1,000 times over to run from organized church. You didn't. Why?
You know, I'm glad you asked this, because there was some time that I had to take for myself, because church had become part of my life to where I felt like it was part of my walk with God, that God wanted me in a building on Sunday morning, and I kind of set it up as kind of my religious thing of doing. But as I walked through some of the pressures that I had gone through, and then the final break that happened about 3 years ago, before I came onto the Global Leadership Summit site, I started to rethink church. And it wasn't, I think I got the country club mentality. It was a place to belong kind of thing. And I got wrapped up in all that belonging thing. And really, for me, it should be a place of being fed for myself. And it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm a connector, and really my connections were happening outside the church. Yeah. It wasn't happening in the church. And so why was I valuing everything about attending a church building? It's important to find a body of believers that you can feel like you can do life with, that you can build relationship with. But I was basing it off of everything at some points and times in my life that I felt like I wanted this place of belonging. I don't know if there was something inside of me that broke years ago, that there was always this trying to find a place to belong kind of thing. And it was like, if I didn't do something more than somebody else, I felt like I wasn't doing enough. And then I would kind of set myself up for failure, or set myself up for for this place of disappointment in my life. And I kind of wonder how much of that I set up on myself than it really was the church. What kept me at the church is that I felt like God needed me. It was telling me I need to be there. I need to be held accountable, because God's teaching me things along the way. And who are these people I'm involving in my life to keep me accountable? And as I share bits and pieces to more and more people, and they find out more and more about me, those become those people like you guys that hold me accountable for those things. And so why didn't that happen earlier in my life? I don't know, but I wish it would have, because it was a hard journey, because rejection is hard. When you feel like you're heading in the right direction, and then all of a sudden things are pulled out from underneath you. But God brings other people along in your life that bring healing and bring more knowledge and wisdom, and you grow more. And I would just say to people, don't hide in your home. You need to find people that will hold you accountable and help you grow, because otherwise you stay stagnant.
Yeah.
So
you're so gifted, so talented. You've had so many different roles. I do want to kind of land the plane here and let you have a chance to say, how does someone, if they're interested, just to talk with you? So, gosh, I want to know more about the GLN. I want to know more about some of the things that are offering. How can our church get involved? How can our community get involved? Because you don't even have to be a church to host this. How do they get a hold of you? How does that begin?
Really, on our website, globalleadership.org, we do have a place where it says, I'm interested in hosting, and they start there by filling out a form. And depending upon the region that you live in, one of our field directors will call you, and they'll talk to you about a little bit about what your vision has been, or what it is in using the Global Leadership Summit as a tool. For myself personally, I usually will give them a call, and we'll have our first talk with one another and give them some time to think it through. And then I'll call them back and have a little bit more in-depth conversation, and then maybe do a site visit just to see, if they're really truly wanting to get involved in it and stuff like that, help coach their team, get them up on board, so that they feel confident for their first year. And I always tell them, get the first 2 years under your belt, and then it becomes kind of routine.
Yeah.
Because you build a system within your own that you do. Yeah.
Well, we'll make sure we include all that in our show notes. But any parting words there, Ryan?
Yeah, I just I felt like when you were sharing, just that this is leaders. If you've dabbled in church, I'm talking to those in the business sector, government, media, wherever you are. Pay attention to what Joellen was saying, because what I'm hearing is a person who is enjoying their life today, who is letting faith and business intersect, who is cultivating beautiful greenhouses where healthy people grow and fostering those environments.
Yes.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
And there's people out there, there's other Joellens out there. So my parting thought would be, Joellen, to that person, one parting thought, what would you say?
I'd say, go for it. We all have our dreams. We all have our callings. And faith and whatever your calling is has to intersect, in order for God to elevate it the way that God wants to use you. He created you. And so he wants to use you in a way that is beyond what you can ever imagine. I never in a million years would have thought this would have happened to me, that I'm working for a national organization here, out of Chicago that is touching and reaching the world. And God's, it's God, it's not me, it's God. And God wants to use you, whether you're a teacher, whether you're in government, whether you're a healthcare worker, whether you're a pastor. God has something specifically that he has assigned to you. And so your faith has to intersect with that in order to have that step into that. You just step into the fullness of what you want to do.
So good.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Well, I know for me, I'll just say, obviously, Joellen, what a gift. Thank you for being with us. And she's with us every week, usually sitting right next to us. So it's not like
I'm behind the scenes,
but, I know we've talked about Lead Wisco, and, part of it is to just offer a resource to leaders throughout Wisconsin and beyond. But also part of it is to keep promoting leadership development and community development everywhere we go. So, man, if you want to know more about that, please contact them. I know we're a church that has been doing it for some time now, over 8 years, and it's been transformational for our church. But lots of, I'm sure, challenges in doing anything in today's culture. And so I would challenge you just to sit and talk with Joelle, and she'll do some great work with you.
Yeah.
All right, my friends. Well, thanks again. And this Lead Wisco, please like, comment, or share as much as you can. We're actually in the midst of being two donkeys, trying to actually become like little popular donkeys, if we can.
I'm envisioning a T-shirt.
Yeah, no kidding. That's probably the logo now. Yeah, Wisconsin with two donkeys on it. Okay. Anyway, don't take that too far.
Please don't.
Anyway, hey, thanks for watching or listening. Again, like, comment, share. We'll see you next time.
You have influence every day. You impact those around you during a season that may have left you in the dark. This can be a new day for your leadership. Join hundreds of thousands of growth-minded, change-driven women and men for the premier leadership event of 2021. I want to feel good. Learn from world-class leaders like Craig Rochelle, champion of the GLS. He will help us expand our capacity for uncertainty, pain, and chaos. Workplace civility expert Shola Richards will show us ways to turn around the thoughts that weaken us so we can experience peak mental health fitness. Returning for her third time to the summit, Juliette Funt will be sharing fresh new content from her first and much anticipated book, A Minute to Think. Best-selling author of Outliers, The Tipping Point, Talking to Strangers, and many others, Malcolm Gladwell is crafting a talk specifically for the GLS that will be relevant to all we've been facing in our world these days. Bianca Althoff, founder of In the Name of Love, is going to share ways to step into leadership when feeling reluctant. Global head of Adidas basketball, Jerry Lorenzo, will be interviewed by Craig Rochelle. Their discussion will identify how conviction, intention, and empathy can drive our organizations forward. General Stanley McChrystal, best-selling author of Team of Teams, will be there to offer a new system by which we can detect and respond to risk. Also joining the faculty this August, Dr. Francesca Gino will help us identify and cultivate rebel talent so we can evolve and prosper in this current environment. Jamie Kern-Lima, founder of IT Cosmetics, Michelle Poehler will show us the difference between being fearless and being brave and how we can overcome our fears. Richard Montañez, the godfather of flaming hot Cheetos and Hispanic branding. Rich Wilkerson Jr., lead pastor of VOO Church. Ebakan Awashika. Ebakan is an amazing leader who is so respected in Africa that she is sought after by many large organizations to speak to their leadership and guide their boards. Dr. Henry Cloud will contextualize and address the struggles all leaders experience on the mental health continuum. A.R. Bernard will be interviewed by Paula Ferris. Finally, Albert Tate will close out the summit with his unique style that combines humor and storytelling, inspiration and conviction, grace and truth. Join us for 2 days of insights and inspiration. Wherever you have influence, your leadership matters.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for listening. We hope that you learned from Joellen's leadership lessons and that you are inspired to intersect your faith with your calling. We also hope that you learned more about the Global Leadership Summit and will consider joining us this August 5th and 6th. We hope to see you there. If this episode was helpful to you, we'd be so grateful if you subscribed or followed us, left us a review, or shared our podcast with someone you think may benefit from it. If you're looking for more leadership content, check out our social media. We post snippets of these episodes, leadership development resources, and more. If there's someone you think would be a great guest for us to talk to, message us on social media or send us an email at leadwisco@gbcc.me. Thanks for listening.